It's the amazing Rico Brogna podcast with your host, Evan Roberts.
Welcome to a very special edition of Rico Brogna. Hi, Met fans. I want to warn you about something. This is the edition of the Rico Brogna that some love, some hate, some find very offensive. It is the Killers series. A year ago here on the Rico Brogna, we decided that, hey, maybe during the offseason, we should bring on an all-time Met killer and reminisce about how they killed us and maybe let out some aggression. You know, tell that person how we truly feel. So a year ago on the Rico, you could check out the archives if you missed it. We had a wonderful conversation with Adam Wainwright. Of course, the big killer of 2006, the man responsible for the curveball heard round the world against Carlos Beltran. If you missed that discussion, go back into the archives. Well, here in 2025, we decided, let's say hello to another killer. It can be cathartic. It can be kind of helpful. So, with it being the 10-year anniversary of one of the most painful experiences of our lifetime in sports, we welcome in one of the true killers from the 2015 World Series, Eric Hosmer of the Kansas City Royals. And for my money, when I think back to losing that World Series to Kansas City, there are a lot of candidates as the ultimate killer. Alex Gordon. I mean, who could forget Alex Gordon hitting the quick pitch home run in Game 1 against Jeiris Familia? Changed everything about that series. Who could forget Salvador Perez? Salvador Perez at 364 during that World Series. Who could think about any of those annoying arms coming out of the Kansas City bullpen? But to me, in my humble opinion, when I think of that World Series and I think of losing to the Kansas City Royals, the number one guy I think about is Eric Hosmer. I think about him for his facial reaction when Alex Gordon hit that game-tying home run. He was going crazy, like, oh. I think of him, of course, for getting the game-winning hit. It was a sacrifice fly, but it was the walk-off sacrifice fly that won Game 1 of the World Series. I think of him breaking Jacob deGrom in Game 2 of that World Series. People forget this. deGrom got off to a great start, pitched 4 no-hit innings. Here's Eric Hosmer getting a couple of hits against Jake, including a big 2-out hit. I don't forget that. And certainly when you think back to Game 5, you think back to his double against Matt Harvey and his keen base running that tied the game in Game 5. Eric Hosmer is a freaking killer. And so for that, in the second ever Killers edition of Rico Brogna, we had a conversation with the man himself, Eric Hosmer of the world champions from 2015 Kansas City Royals. Welcome to the Killers series, a very special edition of Rico Brogna where we bring in somebody that really killed us throughout Met history. And so on this 10-year anniversary of losing the World Series in horrific, painful fashion to the Kansas City Royals, to me, this is the guy that killed us the most. You could argue Salvador Perez, you could argue Alex Gordon, but to me, it was this guy, Eric Hosmer. So, Eric, first of all, fuck you. We'll start there. And thank you very much for coming on the Rico. We appreciate it.
Hey, Salvador's got the MVP, most valuable player. I'll take the most hated award. I've gotten that a couple different cities throughout the years, so I'm all right with it.
Yeah, you did a lot of crap to us, but I want to start. Let me start with before you got to us. So we beat the Chicago Cubs. We sweep them. The Mets are in the World Series. I can tell you firsthand, I didn't want to play you guys. I wanted to play the Blue Jays. I thought that lineup would be easier to face with our big strikeout arms. After you beat Toronto in that Game 6, how quickly do you and your teammates start thinking about, okay, what's next? Like, is it 5 minutes of celebrating? Is it a day of celebrating? How quickly do you pivot towards thinking about the New York Mets?
Yeah, we were on a different mission that year because, obviously the year before in 14, we lost to San Francisco, took it all the way to Game 7, and we really did feel like we were a better team, but ultimately we weren't. And Bumgarner was just, on another planet. You couldn't hit him. He wasn't making a mistake, none of that. So it wasn't like we really weren't sweating about who we were playing. It was just like we got through that first round. We got to the season, got to the playoffs. We got punched in the mouth that first round against Houston to where we were down 2-1 in Houston, down like 5 runs in the 8th inning, came back, won that series. So that was kind of our wake-up call. That one, like in the NFL, these teams are saying we need that loss to wake us up. And then boom, that was our loss. But then after that, it just really didn't seem like nothing could stop us and nothing was in our way.
That, it's funny thinking about it, why I feared you. A part of it was the lineup, but I think a part of it was that team on a mission feel because of the fact that you guys came so close a year earlier against San Francisco. So was that like in spring training, was it we're on a freaking mission after how close we came a year ago?
Yeah, we definitely were. And we had a lot of guys that were back that next year. Our contracts, we still had like 2-3 years left. So we felt like we were a team, like it was almost like a summer league type feel because we all knew a majority of us were coming back. So we were fired up. We were ready to go. And I think there is something to be said about that team that goes to the playoffs the year before, gets a taste, loses, and then gets in that next year. That's why I'm excited for the Royals. They got knocked out by the Yankees this past year. They beat Baltimore, but I feel like they got enough of a taste. Bobby Wood Jr., who's a superstar, he's got a taste. But I think there is something to be said that year before losing and then going back.
How much did you guys know about the arms as you prepared for this series with Harvey and deGrom and Syndergaard? Obviously, these are the years before playing every team every year, which is now a new thing in baseball. How much did you know about those guys going into the series?
We knew a lot about them. I mean, those guys were – deGrom is going to go down as one of the best pitchers of, my generation of playing. I mean, Syndergaard, his stuff at that point in time was better than anybody in the league. I mean, this guy, I remember we faced the Mets the following year after we won in 16
opening day. How freaking weird was that?
So weird. And I mean, it was cool, but it was weird. But he was throwing like 95, 96 mile an hour sliders. And it's like, man, this guy, he's nasty. And then Harvey was on a huge run. And then you had Matz, who was nasty as well, that no one really talked about. So the big thing that series I remember was these guys all had velo 96 plus, and then us, we hit velo really well. Everything over 96, we had good averages, good numbers against. So it felt like we kind of took them out of their game plan a little bit because they came in Kauffman Stadium first 2 games and they were kind of trying to throw some cutters, throw some different off speed. They didn't really just hammer us with their fastballs. So I think it worked out for us at the end of the day.
All right, let's get to the beginning of this World Series because the freaking beginning of this World Series still gives me nightmares when Alcides Escobar swings at the first pitch, which he was doing throughout the postseason, and hits that ball to center field. And we still don't know as Met fans what the hell Yoenis Cespedes was doing. Obviously, you're in the dugout at this point. You're batting cleanup. This is the leadoff hitter. What is going through your mind when you see Escobar do what he's done all postseason? Swing at the first pitch, and then Cespedes is playing kickball with the ball in center field, and it turns into an inside the park home run.
It was like, dude, I'm telling you, man, it was like a thing. It was a team of destiny. And we felt like there is no chance. Nobody is knocking us off. We are winning this World Series. And then that was a sign right there. I mean, that was incredible. And it gets me thinking, like, nowadays with all the sports books and all the betting going on, I mean, the odds of a first pitch inside the park home run must have been through the roof. I mean, you could have got rich in Vegas off of those odds, but that set the tone, huh? That set the tone for us. And that was our message of like, we are not losing this. It's not happening.
Well, the other thing that I noticed early on in game one was, and you kind of talked about it, you guys just wouldn't strike out to these high strikeout pitchers. So even when you got that sac fly against Harvey in the 6th inning, you're behind in the count 0-2. And we were used to Matt Harvey putting someone away when he's ahead 0-2 and there's 1st and 3rd, nobody out. And all of you guys kept putting the bat on the freaking ball. Do you remember that at bat and how you were able to not strike out against the guy who, for the 2 years he was healthy, was one of the great strikeout pitchers in all of baseball?
Yeah, that was something as a team we definitely pride ourselves on. And I think that's something that baseball as a whole got away from is getting back to now because it shows up in the postseason. There's certain times, there's certain situations where you need that contact with the guy on third, less than 2 outs. And when you look back at the games, there's like 1 or 2 missed opportunities that could be the deciding factor. So that was something that we really, really preach as an offense, that we have to take full advantage of those opportunities. And we were always more confident because you got to think about it, with 2 strikes, those guys with wipeout sliders, they're trying to throw it in the dirt. So we felt like with our speed, the guys that we had on the bases, with their threats of stealing bases, that their sliders would get left up a little bit and not bounce them. So we felt like we were able to make contact that way. So I think that helped us with the contact factor big time.
Because honestly, I think that was one of the biggest differences in the series, like that inning, because Mets took the lead after Escobar hit that home run. So we have a 3-1 lead, and you guys rallied in the 6th inning, and you did it by not striking out. Matt Harvey in that game struck out 2 guys over 6 innings, which he never did. throughout the course of the regular season. He was always striking out 7 or 8 guys, and here you guys were never striking out against him.
Yeah, but to their credit, we swung. We swung early. We did not wait around. That was, our hitting coach, Dale Swaim. He was a former Yankee. He was a former coach with the Red Sox. He's great, but he would always preach to us. He goes, guys, the stuff that these guys are featuring now, especially with 2 strikes, and they're trying to wipe you away and throw it in the dirt. He goes, I wouldn't wait around. I would go after that first pitch fastball because they're going to try and throw it somewhere within that box. And then after that, they're just going to try and nibble the corners. So that was an offensive approach that we definitely adapted and we definitely enjoyed. And that was the thing too with Escobar. There was a crazy stat they kept talking about every show all the postseason that if he swung at the first pitch, we were averaging like 4 or 5 runs a game. We were winning 70-something% of the time. So we were kind of all at the top step every first pitch, like, buddy, you better swing. Come on, we need you to swing. The numbers work out in our favor.
Yeah. It's almost like someone should have put it in his ear, which we'll get to for game 3. We'll get to that. The 9th inning, Mets are up by a run. Jeiris Familia, who had been so good in the postseason up until this point, gets the first guy out. It was Salvador Perez, and then Alex Gordon, I guess, sniffed out the quick pitch. Were you guys aware of the Jeiris Familia quick pitch?
No. So this is crazy you say this, and now this is a great opportunity. So my podcast, Digging Deep, which you told me you would gracefully plug before this, and I appreciate that.
Digging Deep with the great Eric Hosmer.
Digging Deep, baby. There, log on there with all the subscription, whatever you got to do it, please. Thank you. But we just had Alex Gordon on there, and we asked him the same thing. We're like, dude, how did you know Familia was going to quick pitch, or he had that in his arsenal? Because once a big league pitcher quick pitches one time, it's on video. Everyone's aware of it. So the hitting coach knows, and he will mention it every single hitters meeting. And Gordo was like, man, we were watching the game before, me and Dale, and he's like, I saw him do that. And I mentioned it to him, and he was like, yeah, I did see that as well. But none of us, I promise you, I did not know until that moment that he quick pitched. And luckily, Gordo was aware of it, and that was in the back of his mind, so he was ready for it.
Oh, my God. That changed the whole goddamn series. I know you guys, you were feisty, and even if the Mets win game 1, there's no guarantee we win the series, but I don't think I've ever screamed, and I was living in an apartment with my new wife at the time. She learned a lot about me that night. I think I screamed fuck at the top of my lungs over it. Not the good kind of screaming fuck, like a bad, angry scream. And then I went back and watched this home run recently, and all I can see is your face screaming probably the same thing I was screaming back in New York. So do you remember everything about your feeling watching Gordon hit that home run?
Oh, man, I definitely do. And there's very few moments you get to witness as a player that is like, man, I get to finally release and let go of what I'm thinking. And that was one of them. And then obviously in Citi Field, I know you hate to hear this, but I mean, Citi Field, I will give it to you guys as fans. You guys were bringing it, man. I mean, the amount of shit you guys were talking, batting practice. I mean, and I respect it because it was up close. It wasn't like you guys were rows and sections away. It was like on the field of batting practice, we're walking towards you, and the fans were just lighting us up. We go eat in the city, whatever it was, blah, blah, blah. And that final inning when, Colon hit the ball to left field and we took the lead. I mean, we all just kind of like turned around to the fans and just let it all eat. You know what I mean? Let it all release. And there was a moment of like, you see the fans kind of sink and go down. And then you can never really say as an athlete you quieted New York City and people were leaving. So that's something that we can always kind of, hang on our head.
No, you're freaking quiet in New York City. No doubt about that. Did you guys have a sense? I've heard athletes say this after there's a big moment. I don't know. Maybe it's easier to say it 10 years later. When he hit the home run and now it's a brand new game and we ended up playing 4 more innings. I mean, the game went to the 14th inning.
Crazy.
Did you know? Like, did you already know? There's no way we're freaking losing this game.
You definitely feel good, especially being at home. If that game's in New York, then it's like, man, we got to survive this. We have to figure out how to survive this and get out of here with a win. Kind of similar to the last game. The last game, we win the last game in New York. If we don't win that game, it's Harvey, it's deGrom, and then it's game 7. So we're like, there's a big sense of urgency to win this game right now because if you look at the day-to-day, the next couple probables they got us on the mound, we do not want to mess those guys. Definitely not, especially a second time, giving them the adjustment side.
Yeah, the extra innings was a slow death, by the way, as a Met fan. Like I sat there kind of waiting for the inevitable, And you guys ended up getting the opportunity in the 14th. The great David Wright made a throwing error. It happens. We love you, David, but he kind of screwed up. And then you came up with bases loaded, nobody out. And at this point, with big Bartolo Colon on the mound, we're all sitting here. It's freaking 1 o'clock in the morning. The game's been going on for 5 hours. The only question was, how is Eric Hosmer shoving this up our ass? Is he going to do it by walking? Maybe the great Bartolo Colon can't throw a strike. I don't know. Are you going to do it
swinging,
by?
I promise you that.
Yeah. Is it up the alley? Is it a grand slam? Take me through your approach in an at-bat like that, where you say you want to swing. It's bases loaded, nobody out. I mean, you're set up to win the game, tie game, bottom of the 14th. What's your approach in an at-bat like that?
Yeah, so luckily, like you said, it's the 14th inning. They had ran through all their, bullpen guys, the guys that come in for one inning and just are nasty, have a nasty slider, throwing 98, 99 miles an hour. Bartolo used to be that guy as a starter as well, but at this point in time in his career, I mean, he's throwing 90, 95% sinkers. So you basically know what you're going to get as a hitter. You know you're getting a sinker. You know you need the ball to start pretty much at your head because it's going to go down and towards the plate. And that's where, I was just kind of zoning him up. I'm like, okay, I know I'm going to get an 89 to 92 mile an hour sinker. Just look for it to start in my head and get this ball in the air somehow, some way. And that helped me a lot. If I had to go up there and it was one of those at-bats where it's like, hey, kind of like we said with Harvey, don't swing at that slider in the dirt, I think that would have took a little bit of aggression out of there. So I was in swing mode. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, underrated. There's moment number one where you shoved it up our ass. There's a few of these throughout this World Series.
Game one, moment number one.
Game one, moment number one, sack fly. Alex Gordon told us what was going to happen. You finished us off. We were the dead body. We were trying to get up. You kicked us to the ground. But I'll tell you what's very underrated. So Jacob deGrom is my guy. I love Jacob deGrom. All-time great Met. I wish they had kept him. And even in 2015, he was my all-time Met because I felt like Met fans didn't fully respect his greatness. Like, Matt Harvey's better, Noah Syndergaard's better. We had like these inner controversies as Met fans on like debating who was the best pitcher. And to me, it was always deGrom. I'm curious, who did you look at as the toughest in that Met rotation at that moment in 2015?
Oh, in 2015, oof, man, I tell you what.
Obviously, Jake went on and became that guy, but in that moment, was it Jake or was it somebody else? Was it Noah? Was it Matt?
For me, it was probably Syndergaard, dude, because Syndergaard, he just, his stuff was so good. Like we said, that opening day, he was throwing 95, 96 mile an hour sliders, and he was a guy with just power. Like he was trying to throw the fastball by you, and then the nastiest slider. Like Harvey, deGrom, in my opinion, those guys, those guys are going to throw strikes. So again, being in swing mode, you can swing and you're going to get a strike. There's a good chance. You don't have to worry about the ball kind of hitting you as a hitter with this stuff being nasty. Syndergaard, I felt like I had trouble with because it was just nasty stuff.
Right. I think you broke deGrom in Game 2 of the World Series because what I think Met fans forget is that he pitched 4 scoreless innings. He got off to a great start in Game 2. We're up 1-0, and then you guys did him in the 4th and 5th inning, and it was freaking you. You broke him open with the 2-run single in the 5th inning. Do you remember what you saw in that bat? There's 2 outs. He's about to get through the 5th inning. It's going to be a 1-1 game going into the 6th inning. deGrom's delivering. You come through with that 2-run hit, and then basically the roof caved in on Jake after that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was like a cutter, some kind of cut fastball. And that was our feel that we felt that was a big edge for us, that the whole thing about us being able to hit velocity and we hit it good at a high level, we felt like that took the Mets, especially their starters, out of their game because we saw a lot of cutters. We saw a lot of off-speed from those guys with power stuff. So I think at the end of the day, especially in those contact situations with runners on base, I think that worked out to be good for us.
Yeah, that's what killed it. You beat deGrom. Johnny Cueto was freaking awesome that night. It wasn't that the night where I think Johnny Cueto found out like his father passed away or something like that?
No, man. So Edison Volquez.
Edison Volquez. I apologize. Yeah.
Yeah, he threw Game 1.
That was what. So when did you guys find out about that? Like after the game, you found out about his dad?
Right after, man. You talk about going from an absolute high to just a low roller coaster ride. We figure so the starting pitcher goes in the clubhouse after the game. They shower up, get ready, and then usually, once you win the game, you're waiting at the entrance of the clubhouse from the dugout, and you're all dapping everybody up, giving high fives. So we're all fired up. We're going in the clubhouse, and nobody sees Volky. And we're like, oh, he must be in there on the music, or he must be, putting a song ready to roll. Because Volky, this guy, I mean, the ultimate teammate. We were just expecting to see an ice pack, and a double cup with some kind of cocktail, and he's just over there kind of dancing, setting the vibe post game, having a good time. And then all of a sudden we get the news. It's like, man, hey, hold on, guys. Like, we're all fired up in a circle, and our traveling secretary broke us the news, and we were just like, oh my gosh, man. Like,
Yeah.
the clubhouse just sank immediately.
Heartbreaking, no question.
Yeah.
All right, now you mentioned earlier, you brought it up, not me, that you guys had this amazing stat. If Alcides Escobar swings at the first pitch, you guys win all the time. Okay? So then, if that's the case, and it's a great stat, wouldn't you now admit 10 years later that Noah Syndergaard was a badass and was right for going up and in on Alcides Escobar to start Game 3 of the World Series? Wasn't that awesome?
Oh, it was not, man. You know what was awesome is if you look at that clip and then you look right after, you see our dugout, and you see Moustakas just cursing no out, seeds flying everywhere, that kind of deal. I will say this, man. I will say this. I think as a team, I feel like there's a little piece of that that's unfinished. Like, we wish we could have plugged him back or at least sent some kind of message. We didn't. Ultimately, thank God it didn't hit Esky's head. But, I mean, you got to give credit to Noah because he definitely said he had a plan and he was going to do something. And, you know, he damn sure did it. But luckily we got the last laugh. But like I said, there's that missing piece of like, damn, we never got our get back.
That was the whole sequence was great because I didn't want to drill him in the head, obviously. I mean, no one wants that, but I thought it was cool that since this guy is swinging first pitch throughout the postseason, why not put him on his ass? Like, I thought that was really cool. Yeah. And then Moustakas.
And you talk about setting a tone. We're in Citi Field. He says all that. All of a sudden that happens. I mean, that place goes nuts.
Yeah.
And then he goes 1, 2, 3 in the first inning, and we're just like, we kind of look around like, oh shit, boys, like it's time to go. You know what I mean?
And Moustakas is screaming at him. You mentioned it. And then after the game, Syndergaard said if he's got a problem, he can meet 60 feet, 6 inches. He basically challenged Moustakas to a fight, and Moustakas never showed. I mean, what's up? Was he afraid of Noah Syndergaard?
Stop. Okay, listen, I gave Noah Syndergaard way too much credit on this episode, all right? That's enough credit for Noah Syndergaard. But no, he doesn't. That's a matchup problem for him if he wants Moose 60 feet, 6 inches away.
You think Moustakas would kick his ass, is what you're saying?
Absolutely. Moose is a dog, man. He's a pit bull. He ain't going to let go.
Well, here's what's funny about all of this. You know, it's been 10 years now. Most Met fans don't like Noah Syndergaard anymore. So it's really like, because it didn't end well. You know what I mean? Like, He was a free agent. I think they were like, I forget what, I think they gave him a 1-year offer, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. He turned it down. He said he was going to accept it. Then he left to go to the Angels. And obviously his career is, unfortunately for him, it hasn't worked. But I think Met fans were upset at the way it ended here. But overall, he was a good Met. But
yeah, it's tough, man, especially guys with their first – I know he ended up getting traded over there, but like coming up with an organization, breaking into the big leagues, and then having success, you see guys around you getting paid, you see extensions happening, and you feel like you're performing at that level, if not a little better. Especially, you know, the amount he was a guy you could market. The fans loved him, big, strong guy, all that kind of thing. So I can see how he's a little bitter, upset that he didn't get, you know, broke off any kind of extension, or he probably got some kind of offer that was just way below what his value was, and he was just pissed about it.
Yeah, I think it was the qualifying offer, if I'm not mistaken, and then he ended up signing with the Angels. It's unfortunate. But
I tell you what, you guys don't have to worry about any undervalued contracts being offered now. My goodness, you guys are spending that money over there.
Dude, this is a different franchise now. Back then, that was the Wilpon Mets, where they were like the little engine that could. Now we're like a big behemoth. We spend fortunes. You know, we spend a lot of money. It's a different franchise now.
I tell you what, this past season, so 2024 season, whatever that year was, that is going to be one of the most important seasons, I think, in Mets franchise history, because the comebacks, the way it all ended, the playoffs, the games in Atlanta, the Milwaukee, I feel like that motivated Stevie Cohen so much that he's like, I'm not losing on Soto. We're getting this every single year. Like, just that amount of excitement in that 2 to 3 week period, I think motivated that your owner, and that guy does not play, man.
No, he's serious, man. I'll tell you, I give you this compliment as we bemoan your team beating my team. I think when the Mets were hitting their stride this year, their strength was their lineup. And I think a lot of us looked at them and said, they kind of remind us of that Royal team from 2015. It gave us nightmares.
Yeah, when that first game in Philly, when they came back, from that point in time after each game, they got down about 3 or 4-0. And And then you're like, all right, when's the inning? There's going
Right.
to be a crazy inning. Like, you just started to expect it.
And that's kind of like what you guys were. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what, you mentioned even in that first round series that you guys played, you're down and you were always coming back. That's what I hated about that series. Like, even when they would build leads, like game 3, the one game the Mets won in the series, every time they would take a lead, it was like, here you guys come again. Like, it was never easy cutting the head off and beating the Kansas City Royals that season.
Yeah, we definitely had a lot of confidence as a team, especially as an offense, that if we could just get it to within one and then eventually tie the game, we just felt like our bullpen was the best ever, that they're going to be able to hold that tie and they'll give us more time to get that lead. So it was always just like, let's tie this thing up and then we know we can get some time and go from there.
No, and a perfect example of it is game 4. So after the Mets win game 3, they make it 2-1. We've got a lead. It's 3-1, and you guys keep clawing away. And the moment from this game that I remember the most, and look, all you did right is you hit the ball, but you hit the ball at the right guy. When you hit that ground ball to Daniel Murphy, did you almost realize at that point in the series, just hit the ball to Daniel Murphy and good things will happen? Because he became so horrific defensively in game 4 and game 5. Did you almost know, put the ball in play and good things will happen against this team?
I tell you what, our pitchers definitely knew not to throw the ball over the strike zone to him, because he was putting everything over the fence leading up to the World Series.
Yeah.
I mean, it got to the point where we played a lot of our games before the Mets, and you can see the game started and you would see the score on the stadium scoreboard, and it was 1-0, whatever it was. And it got to the point where you just started to assume that Murphy hit homers, and it was crazy. But, that was something that Hawk Harrelson would always call it Kansas City special. We felt like we got a lot of bounces that went our way. There was times where the ball went under someone's glove and we definitely benefited from it. And, we were lucky in that aspect, but at the same time, we felt like our athleticism as a team put a lot of pressure on teams. So maybe that caused a couple of those, and hopefully that was the case.
Well, look, I think a lot of it is when you put the ball in play, there's a chance good things are going to happen. Like, that's the frustrating thing about teams and guys that strike out so much. If you strike out, good things aren't happening. It's over unless the catcher commits a pass ball. You know what I mean? Like, you hit the ball to second base, good crap can happen. And I think about a lot of the rallies in this series, even that 14th inning when you ended up getting the game-winning sacrifice fly, it started on a ground ball to third where David Wright made an error. The rally in the 8th inning of game 4, you hit a ground ball to second base. Like, if you hit the ball, there's a chance good things are going to happen. I think it's a reminder that that's important in baseball.
Absolutely. And we touched on it earlier. I think baseball is starting to get back to that trend, especially after this past World Series, the Yankees and Dodgers. The Yankees made a lot of mistakes, especially in that 5th inning that everyone is definitely highlighting and talking about. So it seems like a lot of these things that weren't so valued, from the sabermetric side, on the defensive side are starting to come back, and you need some defense out there, and you need guys that know what they're doing in certain positions.
Let's get to game 5. Game 5 is the one that I think still haunts all of us. By the way, I'll tell you something. You think you won the World Series because of that great rally in the 9th inning. You think you won the World Series because of the 12th inning. You won the World Series. Let me tell you a little secret. I took my wife to game 5. She didn't go to any playoff games with me. I was only with my dad. And we had bought tickets to fly to Kansas City for game 6 and game 7.
Okay.
Let me tell you something, Eric. She knows nothing about sports. Not a damn thing. We are sitting there as the 9th inning is about to begin, and she looks at me and says, "Baby, we're going to Kansas City."
No.
And I was like, "Are you freaking kidding me?" We almost divorced on the spot, man. So you won the World Series because my freaking wife jinxed the crap out of us in the 9th inning, just so you know.
Oh, man. I hate that she had to learn that way, that hard of a way. That is devastating. But, I mean, at least I hope that she never made that mistake ever again.
She learned her lesson. Her lesson.
That's a tough way to learn.
Now, in that game, before we get to the 9th inning, Matt Harvey was unbelievable. And differently than game 1, he was striking guys out. He was electric. As an opponent who struck out in his first 2 at-bats against Matt Harvey, I don't say that in any kind of mean way. He was doing it to everybody. Was he as dominant as you've seen a pitcher pitch, especially in an environment and a situation like that?
Yeah, Harvey was. His stuff, not only his stuff, but his mentality. He was a guy that, he was willing to fight anybody out there. You just saw it. You saw the mentality. He kind of had a hockey player's mentality on the mound. So I think guys knew once he got going, he was going to get stronger and stronger. And he's not going to let anybody finish the game for him. So that was kind of we were definitely under the impression that he was going full 9 innings that night, because as each inning went on, I mean, he was getting fired up and the crowd was getting even more fired up. And what a tough situation that puts Terry Collins in, because I would not want to be the guy that would be like, hey, Matt, you're done here. You're not going back out in the 9th inning.
All right. So this is a debate amongst Met fans. It will probably last forever. I swear to you, I have no reason to lie all these years later. As I sat there, I wanted him out of the game after the 8th inning because I thought he had just given us 8 brilliant innings. Yeah. Familia had not gotten clean innings because they kept going to him with guys on base as they did an inning earlier or a game earlier. So I was ready to say, all right, Matt, thank you very much. As somebody that was due up that inning, you're due up second in this inning. What did you want? Forget about what you expected. Like, did you prefer, hey, I hope Terry Collins takes his ass out of the game? Like, what did you want as someone that was going to bat in that 9th inning down?
I mean, a couple things. You know, Matt is nasty. His stuff is nasty. Familia, I mean, he was throwing bowling ball sinkers at 100 miles an hour at that point in time in his career. So both guys nasty. Probably would have wanted to face Matt just because it was that fourth at bat. Seen him 3 times. You know, obviously that's a little more to the advantage as a hitter. So that's definitely it. I was definitely surprised as soon as he walked Kane that he did not come get taken out the second batter for me, because the big thing now is, you know, Familia being a sinker guy, nasty sinker guy on first. The whole world, especially the analytical world, talks about how my launch angle is so bad and I hit so many ground balls. I mean, you got the best sinker baller, the best ground ball pitcher in the world at this point in time, and you don't bring him in to face me, who hits nothing but ground balls. So there's a lot of questions there. But to answer your question, definitely Harvey, just because it's my 4th at bat against him.
You're freaking killing me with that thing you just said, because that was the other thing. You want him to start the 9th inning, fine. Once he walks Lorenzo Cain, how the hell is he still in the game? And like, I wasn't even factoring in your freaking launch angle and double play. I was just factoring in, he put a guy on base. The tying run's coming up. Get his ass out of the game. And you're basically telling me as the guy coming up, that's what they should have done.
Hey, listen, I respect as a fan that you didn't know what my launch angle was, because that makes me feel you're an old school type fan, and I love that. Yeah. That's like my last like 3-4 years of my career, that was like the fans' biggest chirp. It's like, Hosmer, you have a bad launch angle. And I'm like, dude, I just left Citi Field in Philly where these guys are telling me to go F myself, and you're telling me about my launch angle. So I'm cool with that. Keep going. That's fine. But yeah, so I have a big pet peeve, obviously, of like wanting to be a manager, wanting to see that part of the game, especially this year in the playoffs. The Royals did it 2 times this year against the Yankees, where they took their starting pitcher out the next inning after the first batter walks. Right. So I can see as a manager how that's like, why would you do that? Just give the guy a clean inning. You're going to take him out after the first bad result. That makes no sense. So maybe Terry Collins was trying to stay away from that rule and wanted to give Harvey another at bat. But other than that, I mean, everything else just kind of lines up to bring it Familia.
And here's what kills me. So when I think back to that World Series, I don't know why, but your line drive that you hit to left center field is the most vivid memory of that entire World Series. And I think a lot of it is I was so pissed that Harvey was still in the game. I was so angry. I couldn't believe he was facing you. But when you hit that ball, that fucking laser beam off the bat to left center, I'm telling you, like, the ball hadn't landed yet. And I was furious because I also knew what was coming next. Okay, you hit that double to drive a run, and who gives a crap about that run? It's now 2-1. But now the tying run is on second base with nobody out, and they're putting J-Riz Familia in this brutal position. You talk about giving a guy a clean inning. Like, he comes in where even getting guys out, he could still give up the lead, which is exactly what happened. He didn't give up a goddamn hit.
It was so weird because I felt like, so as a fan especially, there's so much energy, so much momentum in that game. You guys are feeling good as Met fans, feeling like you're going to win. And the weird thing was, I remember the games were on Fox, and the games would start super late because we had to wait for the football games, the Saturday, Sunday football games to be over. So as a fan, you're waiting there that much longer. The games are 4 hours. You guys are winning the whole entire game. Harvey's dominating. Kane's got 2 strikes in the 9th inning, walks, steals a base, double. So then all of a sudden it's like boom, boom. And as a fan, you're just probably like, what the hell is happening right now? And then, like you said, you just kind of had that feeling like oh shit, here it comes again. The Royals are going to find a way to do it, and then we go to extra innings and we do it.
Yeah, oh yeah, you did it. Now
We done did it. Yeah.
You done did it. The thing you did of all the things that killed us, we mentioned game-winning hit game 1, 2-run single, or I think it was just an RBI single against deGrom in game 2. You made brilliant defensive plays. I haven't even wasted our time on the double against Matt Harvey. Screw all that. This comes down to a ground ball to third base with 1 out. It's like you're looking at David. You're like, okay, throw to first base. Go ahead. Go ahead, little bitch. Go ahead, throw to first base. He throws to first base. No offense, you're not Ricky Henderson. Take off. Like, screw it. I'm going to tie this game. And then Lucas Duda, who's not you defensively at first base, to be nice, throws the ball away. So take me through this as a non-athlete, because I know nothing. Did you know in your head, if a ball is hit to David Wright, I'm going to time this sumbitch, and I am scoring. I don't care where the infield is set up. What was your mental preparation before that whole sequence?
So, I mean, oh man, what a ballsy play that I should not have done, but it worked out to be a great situation for me. But I feel like the only reason why I had the thought in my mind was because, number one, we knew David was kind of banged up throughout the series. And then, you mentioned Murphy and Duda, a couple guys were kind of going through a rough stretch defensively. So it's like, okay, let's push the envelope whenever we can on the bases, especially with their infield. So that was kind of our team message. That was what we were, kind of talking about every team meeting. So I just remember fast forwarding to that ball that Salva hit off Amelia. It was infield in, and David Wright was kind of off the bag a little bit. So my lead was bigger because I wasn't worried about any kind of back pick from the catcher. So as the ball's hit, I take like kind of 1-2 more shuffles, and me and David just kind of look at each other. And, I'm pretty sure it was a shoulder or something was messed up. So I know, when you're grinding through something like that, like you can't just boom, turn and throw. It's gotta, you got to kind of get your body in a position so it doesn't hurt. So I felt like once he turned to get in that position, I just took off and said, all right, here's our shot. And, I felt like we were playing with a little bit of house money, being up a couple games. Familia's on the mound. He's nasty. The chances of getting a hit off him aren't very good. So I was just like, F it, man. I'm doing it.
If Lucas Duda makes a good throw, are you out?
Yeah, I'm hosed, man. I'm toast. I am. That's the fastest I've ever felt like I ran in my life, too. I felt like I got to home in 3 strides, and I kind of like fell into the dive. But, watching the replay and seeing the timing of the throw, if it was on point, then yeah, it would have been tough for me to make it.
Now, similar to game 1, once you tie this game, you're on a road environment, so it's very different. Did you know deep down there's no way we're losing this game?
Yeah, it was like, all right, let's go. We are not losing this game. Like we need to get this party going tonight. And that was another thing I mentioned earlier. If we got it to a tie game, we felt like our bullpen, like we had plenty of time to get that 1 run, because those guys, they were lights out all season and all postseason, pretty much for a whole 2-year run, because in 14 it was the same way.
Yeah, no, it was. And the Mets didn't even rally. Like, that was the thing. Like, your bullpen was so locked down that even after you guys tied the game, Mets could easily win at the bottom of the 9th inning, 1-2-3. Could have won it in the bottom of the 10th inning, 1-2-3. Could have won it in the 11th. Did absolutely nothing. It was almost like they knew, my God, we had this game won, and it was so mentally draining blowing that lead in the 9th inning that they were like, it felt like they were cooked offensively.
Yeah, and that's where, guys like a Duffy, Hochaver, those guys in the bullpen that were holding those leads, I mean, to do that on the road in Citi Field where 1 run ends the game, like that's just that much more impressive. And those guys were, I'm telling you, lights out the whole entire postseason. Ryan Madison, another one. I mean, those guys were filthy.
What was so terrible about when you guys finally silenced us in the 12th inning, Christian Colon and then Escobar got a hit, was it felt like you guys had a lot of Royal fans there. And so all the Met fans left. I was sitting there because I'm a schmuck. And it felt like I was in Kaufman Stadium, New York, as you guys were celebrating those last few outs.
Yeah, so there's, that family section that's kind of at the top right over the dugout. And then there was another section in like the furthest possible section in left field, 3rd row, all the way to the top, 3rd deck. And I felt like that was where they put the friends and like some of the Royal staff from Kansas City that came. And then the family section was there. Other than that, it was all Mets. When Kane hit the double against Cologne and the bases cleared in the top half of that last inning, the whole place, I mean, was emptying out. And you just saw those 2 sections standing up saying, let's go Royals. And it was like, man, look at this small town team that's taken over the big city. And it was pretty sweet, man. Because again, I know there's no sympathy there. You're just pissed at us. But the year before, man, we got left standing on our field and watched the Giants celebrate. And we're like, God damn it. Like, what the hell is going on? So, we definitely knew the other side of that feeling as well.
No, I get it. And I can't tell you how many times I've used your team as an example as the team I hope I root for. Like, they take it personal that they lost, whether it's in an LCS in the Mets case. Your case, obviously, it's the 7th game of the World Series with Madison Bumgarner on the mound. And I think it was Salvador Perez hitting a pop up the third base. It was freaking crazy. And I always dream, like, can my team be that team that takes the motivation of a loss like that and goes all the way the following season?
Crazy,
that
man.
has not happened for any team I root for, by the way. So
I tell you what, I tell you what too, and I hear it a lot, and it's pretty damn cool. But Kansas City, that 2014, we lose the World Series. Those 2 years for baseball, and then 16, they started their Super Bowl runs with the Chiefs. So, like, as fans, I mean, they have not looked back at that point in time. But hey, if it makes you feel any better, and I know that the Stevie Cohen led owned Mets would never do this. But we were partying on Citi Field after the game, and they shut the lights off on us within like 10, 15 minutes.
Good.
And we're outside like, oh, that's fucking cool. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. So we had to take the party somewhere else.
The difference is that was probably the Mets just being cheap at the time. Like, let's shut these lights off. We weren't even being dicks. We weren't being vengeful. It was just, this electric bill is way too high.
Get them out of here.
So years later, congratulations on the World Series, blah, 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 blah. Years later, we understood it as you were about to be traded to the New York Mets. And I can tell you right now, with all due respect, I did not want you because my feeling is
I get it.
Has nothing to do with you as a player and what you were doing in San Diego. Has nothing to do with that. My view as a fan is someone who sticks it up my ass and then comes to my team years later will probably not benefit me. It's just, it'll end badly. We'll be bitter over something that you did right, like winning the 2015 World Series. Like, I didn't think it would ever be fair to you. So I was like,
so much has to go right for that relationship to get back, right? I understand that. I understand it completely.
So were you because I remember it was a Padre trade where we were sending Dom Smith, I think, to San Diego. You were coming to the Mets. The Mets were getting like 2 other pieces. I think Chris Paddock was one of them. How close was that to happening, and what caused it to not happen?
From what I understand, it was a done deal. And then I think something along the lines with Paddock's medical records that was the reason why the deal stopped. But we had a night game in spring training, and I got a call from the GM after that game, and he was like, hey, listen, man, you're getting traded tomorrow. It's between 2 teams right now. One team is a good team in a good city. The other team's not really that good, but it's a good city. And that was kind of all he said. I really was trying to figure out who it was. The next morning, I'm like wondering whether or not I should go in the complex, what's happening. So I'm talking to Scott, and he's like, okay, I think there's a deal getting done with you going to the Mets. So then we're kind of getting ready, kind of figuring out where we're going to stay there if we go, blah, blah, blah. Then later on through that day, the deal ends up getting held up because apparently, and this is all kind of what I've heard hearsay, Paddock's medical records, there's some kind of red flags that the team didn't want, something like that. So that trade fell through. And then I believe the other one was at the point in time, the Cubs, and they were trying to get Contreras over to San Diego, and that trade ended up falling through as well. So that day was weird because I'm just kind of hanging around my house or the place I'm running in spring training, whether or not should I go into the field. I show up late. Then I finally get there. Media wants to know what's going on, what I'm thinking. It's an awkward spot for my teammates because they're like, damn, dude, like, what the hell's going on? You staying, you leaving? And they know, like, I'm the target. If you're in the clubhouse, you want to know, you're going right up to me asking me questions. So it was definitely a weird day, but I do believe that the Mets and the Cubs were those 2 teams.
So would you have stayed with the Mets, or were they going to flip you? Like, were you going to be a member of the Mets if that trade went down?
I don't know, man. So the only connection that I believe could have been possible there was when Buck Showalter was the manager and Wayne Kirby was the first base coach, and I was with them in San Diego, and Bobby Dickerson as well. And those guys were all together in Baltimore, and we really hit it off in San Diego. Those guys, they love like the fundamentals of the game. They had the old school mentality, and I really hit it off with all those guys. So that's why I thought, okay, maybe Buck Showalter talked to them, and that's probably why it's happening.
That would have been interesting. That would have been very interesting. I
That
just
would have been weird. Yeah.
it's just,
Would've
you
been
know
weird.
what? It just wouldn't have worked. Let's be honest. You're a villain. You can't come here and have things
Trust
work
me.
out with us.
I get it, man. It would have been an awkward, weird situation, right? Because Duda ended up playing with the Royals, and I felt like that was kind of that same situation. It was weird. It was like, this is awkward.
Yeah, I guess I almost think that's easier because he's the loser. He's the one you laugh at and say, "Oh, remember that error you made in Game 5 of the World Series and basically cost your team?" Like, I think it's almost easier to laugh and say whatever. But when someone beats you, because I'm telling you, it's Gordon, and it's Salvi. Those three guys were the three big evils of that World Series. But hey, congratulations. It's been 10 years. And
Hey,
we
there
haven't
go.
won since. When we do, I think I'll be able to forgive everything that happened in that World Series. That's my attitude.
Hey, I tell you what, man, I was having a lot of fun this year on social media, especially X, but especially with Mets fans this year because it seemed like it was the magical ride. Like this was the season that everything was going your way. Those bad hops, those balls, those calls, you were getting all of it. So, man, it was. But I mean, like we said, a lot to look forward to because that owner is an absolute savage out there, and they got some players.
He's trying to win, that's for sure. Digging Deep is
Mhm.
the name of the podcast to check Eric Hosmer out. Eric, I do appreciate it. Thank you very much for coming on and reminiscing over what was a horrible, horrible moment in New York Mets history, and that's losing the World Series to you pricks in Kansas City.
Appreciate it. We're at 10 years, so hopefully we can get over it pretty soon after this.
We're trying. Someday. Eric Hosmer, ladies and gentlemen, the second ever Killer Series. That, ladies and gentlemen, was Eric Hosmer. And I know what you're thinking. You're going to say the same crap you told me a year ago about Waino. Why did you make that guy seem so nice? Why can't we just hate him without realizing he's a good dude? I apologize. Any complaints or any questions, you can, of course, email us anytime at thericob@gmail.com. Now, besides Chipper Jones, who I know everyone wants to have as a member of the Killer Series, what other killers should we talk to in the near future and the distant future? Certainly let us know at thericob@gmail.com, thericob@gmail.com. Thank you very much, my fellow Met fans, for reminiscing, for being depressed, and for enjoying another edition of Rico Brogna and another edition of the Killer Series.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rico Brogna podcast. It's amazing, isn't it? Make sure you download it now to keep it on you at all times.